Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Sheviit. We're up to Perek Yud Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnah should be Mishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbai Minuchato Began Eden Amen and Labdil ben Chaim Lechaim to the Refuah Shalema of Yonatan ben Abraham Betoch Shah Chulei Yisrael. Now Rabotai, we know that a prusbul document protects from cancellation only loans that were already made. It does not protect money that is lent after the prusbul is made. Therefore, since the prusbul document is used as proof of the prusbul that you made, it's important that the correct date has to be used, has to be recorded in the document. The Mishnah now is going to teach us the law for a misdated prusbul document. The Mishnah says, prusbul mukdam kasher. A predated prusbul is valid. What does that mean, predated? For example, if a creditor makes a prusbul in Kislev, but he records the date as Tishrei, which is 2 months earlier, the prusbul is valid. Why? Because with this inaccuracy, the creditor is only harming himself, because now he will not be able to use the prusbul to collect loans that he made after Tishrei. Now the Mefarshim, if you look the Rab, they explain that in reality, the prusbul protects all the loans that were made before Kislev because it was really written in Kislev. The problem here is that since the creditor won't be able to use it to collect any loans made after the date written in the prusbul document, because they see the date says Tishrei, you can't collect any loans that were made in the next month, Cheshvan or in Kislev, because he can't prove that the prusbul covers those loans. Since the creditor is only harming himself by predating a prusbul, the Chachamim allowed it. It is valid. However, the Mishnah says, "V'meucha pasul." A post-dated prusbul is not valid. Why? Because it can be used to collect debts unlawfully. For example, if one makes a prusbul in Tishrei, but he records a date in Kislev, the creditor might use it to collect money that was lent in Cheshvan, which is in fact not protected by the prusbul, because I wrote it in Tishrei. That means up until now the loans are covered. From Tishrei and on, which is Cheshvan, Kislev, those loans are not covered. So if I write a date for Kislev, I'm throwing in an extra month that the loans are not really covered. Therefore, it's not valid. And the Mefarshim explain, since the creditor can use this prusbul to collect debts that it does not actually cover, the Chachamim, the sages, declared the prusbul invalid, and it doesn't protect any loans, even the loans that you made before it was written. Now, Rabotai, the Mishnah is going to discuss now another type of misdated documents. For most loans, what they would do is the lender has a lien on property that the borrower owns at the time of the loan, even if he later sells that property. It's on my contract. It's on my loan document. The lender uses the document that records the loan to collect from property if the loan is not repaid. Like exactly what a lien is, right? So the Mishnah is now going to discuss the law when the loan document is misdated. Shitrei chov mukdamim psulim. Predated loan documents are not valid to use to collect the lien. Why? Because they can be used to collect from property that is not under the lien, such as property that the borrower sold before the loan even took place. For example, the Mefarshim say, for example, if a loan took place in Kislev, but the document is dated Tishrei, which is 2 months earlier, the lender might use the document to show that the loan took place in Tishrei, and thereby collect from property that the borrower owned in Tishrei, but sold in Cheshvan. This property is not actually under any lien, since the borrower did not own it at the time of the loan. He already had sold it. So we have 3 months, let's say. Tishrei, Cheshvan, and Kislev. I lent you the money in Kislev. I predated the document to Tishrei. That means that even property that you sold already, which wouldn't be considered a lien on the loan we made 2 months later, I can claim that in fact I can collect them. Since this document can now be used unlawfully, the Chachamim declared it invalid to collect any lien. The document can be used as proof of the loan, but it cannot be used to collect any lien. And the Mishnah says, "V'amucharim ksharim." However, post-dated loan documents are valid to use to collect the lien, because again, they cannot be used unlawfully, because if the document is post-dated, for example, I lent money in Tishrei, but I dated the document for Kislev, the lender can use it to collect only from the property that was still in the borrower's possession on the date written in the document. Since this merely limits the lender's options and it cannot be used illegally, the document is valid and can be used to collect a lien. Because again, I lent money in Tishrei, but I'm writing it as Kislev. So for sure, whatever you sold between Tishrei and Kislev was already subjugated to the lien. It's just I'm giving myself less options to collect from. Therefore, it's considered valid. Now, the Mishnah concludes by telling us a rule. It is the lender, not the borrower, who makes the prusbul. And the Mishnah explains, if one person borrowed money from 5 people, a prusbul must be written by each creditor. Why? Since a prusbul works by the creditor giving the debt to the court, each creditor has to write his own prusbul. However, if 5 people borrowed money from one person, he writes only one prusbul for all of them, because a single prusbul covers all the debts owed to him. And that is El Rabotai of Mishnah Hey. Mishnah Vav continues, En kotvin prusbul ela ala karka. We do not write a prusbul unless the borrower has land. If the borrower has land, the prusbul makes it as if the court already holds the land mortgage to the loan before Shemitah, and therefore the loan would not be subject to cancellation. The Mishnah now is going to discuss a number of cases where the debtor has no land to guarantee his loan. They don't always have land. Im en lo mizakeu betoch sadeu kolshu. If the debtor has no land, the creditor can grant him a small amount of land within the creditor's own field, and a prusbul can be written based on that allotment. The Mefarshim explain even a piece of land so small that it can grow only a single cabbage stalk, that's enough to guarantee the largest loan for the purpose of the prusbul. Since land does not have a fixed value, even the smallest plot of land can theoretically be priced at the value of a large loan. Therefore, what you would do is the creditor would give some of his allotted portion of the field to the debtor, and then we would write it based off that portion of the field. If the debtor owns a field in the town that's being held by another creditor as security for a different debt, we may still write a prusbul based on it, because even though the Mefarshim explain, even though this land cannot technically guarantee the loan because it's already secured by a different lender, it's enough to allow a prusbul to be written for the loan. Rabbi Chutzpit says, Kotvin la'ish an nichsei ishto. We may write a prusbul for a loan made by a man based on property owned by his wife. That, the Mefarshim explain, is referring to property that a wife owned before her marriage, which we call nichsei melog. The halacha is that while this property belongs to the wife, because she already owned it before she came into the marriage, her husband has the right to benefit from it. For example, he may farm it and keep the produce. So his right to this benefit allows us to view the land as his for the purpose of prusbul, and for a loan made on behalf of orphans based on property owned by their guardian who borrowed the money for them. Basically, the Mefarshim explain, the court would appoint a guardian to oversee the affairs of orphans who are minors. If the guardian borrows money on their behalf, as long as the guardian owns land, a prusbul can be written for the loan, even though the orphans, who are the ones who owe the money, have no land. Like we just read, a loan made on behalf of the orphans based on the property owned by their guardian who borrowed money for them. Even though these pieces of land are not owned by the borrowers in the conventional sense, they're owned by their guardian, that suffices to allow prusbul to be written based on them. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.